Hi folks, my name is Andrew Lee. I am the owner-operator of Tagiuk Gold, an offshore mining company. We mine for gold off the bottom of the Bering Sea near Nome, Alaska. Tagiuk Gold, a Bering Sea of possibilities. Over the years in Nome, I've had many adventures. Here's a picture of me after I landed my sea-doo, doing crab fishing off the back of a sea-doo. This is about 2009, 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And here is me in my business suit. This is a 7 or 8 mil suit with a custom hot water adaptation that I made to the suit to turn a $400 suit into a hot water suit. Here I am with a full face mask. Wearing this suit, I had no skin exposed. Today I'd like to talk to you about my 8-inch dredge that I designed and built in 2008. Here it is in 2010, waiting for the ice to break up and start mining. Now, I designed and built this dredge along with my mining partner from scratch, basically. I designed this dredge, did all the calculations and cutting, and my mining partner did the welding and double-checked the math and sanity checked it, and we constructed it together. We built this in girdwood, and it has a lot of nice features. To start with, the dredge is the core of the pontoons are just under 20 feet long, and we did this so that it would fit into a 20-foot shipping container. So I believe it's 19-foot 6 or 19-foot 8. Then we added the nose cone and the tail cone later. This dredge has 8 unpowered wheels. Now this is an important feature. This allowed it to be towed out of the water down the beach. Most dredges had wheels prior to the start of people using the harbor more and more. After the harbor was rebuilt and expanded in 2006 or 7, more dredges started using the harbor as dredges got bigger. But before that, almost all dredges were beach launch and amphibious. The other advantage is the dredging areas were typically quite a ways away. These dredges are fairly slow in the water, so we wanted to be able to quickly get from the beach down into our dredging spot. So here we could park on shore near our dredging spot and then just roll down the beach and start dredging by traveling a quarter mile or so versus having to drive 5 or 6 miles from the harbor. On the East Beach rec area, the 8-inch rec area, people would park on the beach, but then the owners of that beach started charging people, and so people decided it was better and safer just to park inside the harbor, and then they would have to travel 2 or 3 miles to get to that East Beach recreational area. One of the nice features about this, so the way I designed this dredge was based on my experience with my first dredge, which used 2-foot diameter round pontoons. This dredge has very flat bottom pontoons, and the way that is an improvement is because as it bobs up and down and the water line changes, the flotation amount doesn't change. When you get this kind of corking effect when you got a round bottom pontoon. So I'm much more in favor of rectangular bottom pontoons. I think they're much better for this environment where we're trying to limit our bobbing motion. You'll also notice this gap here from the deck to the top of the pontoon. So the water line's about halfway up the pontoon, as it should be for most boats. And any waves that come up in the weather we were out in this dredge, the waves would come up, and if they got big enough to splash over, they'd splash through in between the deck, so they wouldn't wash over the deck. That was a pretty important feature. For this dredge, we did something a little bit different. We used a sump. So this isn't actually a sluice box here. It goes from the jet to the flare to a screen deck, and then we had a sump to pump the material up to our sluice box. So this enabled us to have better recovery by screening off the oversized rocks that wouldn't be gold. I think we screened to 3/4 inch or 1 inch, and just isn't nuggets that big, and if there are, the diver's going to see them. We used Keen, off-the-shelf Keen jets and flares, and for our transfer nozzle, we used a Keen power jet. It's a great nozzle for dredging, but for what we were doing as a transfer pump, it was not a good eductor jet pump. We should have used something different because this would wear and wear and wear, and it took a lot of maintenance to keep this thing alive. But here we got the ladder for the diver, the wheels, and the outboard goes back here. Here's a side view, again the gap. So we have the engine box here where you put the water pump, water intake dangles over here. So it's away from the tailings. That's pretty important because you don't want to be sucking up your tailings into your water intake. And then there were 3 lines coming off here, 1 to each side of the jet, which were 3-inch lines, and then a 2-inch line came to the sump to power that and pump up to the sluice box. Here's another view. I use a student version of this software from college. Now, I didn't really have any engineering classes when I made this dredge design, but I had a few other college classes which were computer modeling. You know, as you may know, I did some modeling in college. Computer modeling, of course. We used big balloon tires, ATV balloon tires, because that was the best for our situation. So here we got the screen deck, and then it pumps up to the sluice box. And we could stack these on top of each other because it really didn't matter. We didn't need to access this screen deck from the top. Oh, there's side view again. Other views, so I'll just, in case you want to pause the video. Now these B-shaped piece and D-shaped piece, when we shipped it up, we shipped these 2 pieces separate and then had the cross beams in purple. So we pulled this out of the container, welded these axles on, and then welded the cross beams on, and then attached the water pump and other stuff to the cross beams. So we did as much as we could prefabricated before we got it to Nome, and then pulled it out of the container and finished it. We could have done a little bit more. For instance, we left these tops off because we wanted to use that space for shipping and storage, and that was a big mistake. We should have just put in some ports, and then we could have put canned foods or whatnot in there. Just put in some round ports, because that was a lot of weld to try to do in the Nome environment, and you don't really want to be doing fabrication work during the mining season. The first barge in Nome gets there in the first week of June, first or second week of June. So you don't want to, that's already when the mining season is in full force. So I think the first year we didn't start mining with this until July. So we lost all of June because of shipping time and construction time. Another view. Another view. Another view. When I design and build a dredge, I take a lot of factors into consideration. I place each component, figure out the weight and the location in X, Y, Z, and figure out the forces involved and everything else. It's pretty complicated. Well, it seems complicated, but if you go through the math step by step, you can figure it out. When we put this dredge in the water the first time, it was within an inch of the line I predicted. That's very basic math. You just have to do it right. A lot of people, they build something, they don't do calculations, and I've seen it before where they put the dredge in the water and it doesn't float. That's happened more than once in Nome. You'd be surprised. And these are supposed to be smart engineer people, and just goes blub, 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 and then they have to pull it back out because it can't get off the trailer. Or I see people buy a dredge and then they start adding stuff to it, and it just is way heavier because every inch of water, that's more displacement, and then that's harder to move through the water, so you go slower. So here we are in Girdwood fabricating the the components. So this is one of the pontoons, and then we got the axles. So we just went to 6 Rob Lee's and got the wheels and the axles, and then we cut them and made them shorter. So I wish I had done powered wheels, but that would have required adding hydraulics, which would have required adding extra weight. So if I were to design this dredge again, I would have made the pontoons taller and put some of the structures on the inside, so it was just a smoother outside. And then I would have had enough flotation to be able to have powered wheels. And I'll explain why that's important later. When I made this dredge, I used 10 gauge steel, and while that worked, it was kind of thin. We were trying to keep the weight down, but again, if I had just made the pontoons a little bit bigger and had powered wheels, the weight wouldn't have mattered. It would have actually been better to have more weight. So after 3 years, I felt that these pontoons were unsafe to keep using, so we stopped using them. But maybe 1/4 inch steel would have been better, but 10 gauge worked, it just wasn't ideal. A lot of grinding and cutting and fitting. We didn't have that great of a shop. A couple connexes with a roof over the top, which worked okay. It was hard to keep it warm though. Had to do a lot of preheating. But this is the typical Girdwood spring weather. Here's some more welding work, fabrication work. For these pontoons, again, because I wanted to ship a lot of stuff in them, we left the top off, but I also didn't put partitions in. The plan was to add foam as flotation inside these pontoons, which we never did. It would have been a lot of weight and expense, and if we had just put partitions in with viewport access ports at the top, that would have been a better way to do it. Yeah, these are 20-foot long pontoons, or just under 20 feet, so we could have done every 5 feet or every however long, have 3 or 4 partitions. That would have made it a lot safer and better. Here we are, more painting, welding, painting. I should have gotten, and I didn't know about it until years later, primed steel that came pre-primed, so that way it's already has a primer paint coating on it. I think that would have been a lot better. Of course, since shipping costs from Anchorage to Nome are about the same or more than Seattle to Nome, I should have just had a shop fabricate these for us to my specifications and then fly down to Seattle and pack everything up, or Seattle, Tacoma, pack everything up in the container and ship it up. But we spent a lot of time doing it ourselves, and it turned out okay. Here's some various other components. You got the foot valves, Keen foot valves. These are 5-inch foot valves. Got the 8-inch jet with the 3-inch flares. Our 8-inch nozzle, all Keen products, Keen Engineering. 8-inch flare. So got the oversized. A lot of other stuff that we put in this container while we were building. Then we had to take everything out and repack it for shipping to Nome. Here we are making the 4-inch by 3 by 3 by 2 splitter, the Y. The water pump we had was a 5 by 4 inch, so it has a 5-inch intake and 4-inch output. So then we need to split that because the jet pumps have 3-inch and 3-inch. And here's our transfer pump we used with a 2-inch intake. So here's the completed Y. The 4-inch, this screws on to the water pump, and then we got the 3-inch and 3-inch, and then the 2-inch outtake. So we put a ball valve on here, so we could turn this off so it stopped transferring. Here we are with our screen deck. So like I said before, we used a screening plant. So this flat diamond metal screening, and then it went down into a hopper down below. So the water flowed across. It was surprising. We thought we'd need more of a layer below, but the material and the water kept flowing across, and the light material dropped. It worked very well. We were surprised. So the ROV used the same type of thing, the same type of setup for its primary stage, where it had a primary screening, then secondary transfer for the 18-inch ROV. Here's the Y again. We were going to weld a couple mounting nuts to it, but we never got around to that. Here's a test in the test pond in Girdwood, running it water, making sure everything was matched our expectations. It's always good to check your equipment as best you can before you get up to Nome, while you have time before the season to fix things. So ideally, I would have had powered wheels like these to drive the dredge out. I don't think we used this sluice box. I think we used a different sluice box, but I can't remember now. Maybe the next pictures will show. We used a old Volkswagen Beetle, Type 2 Volkswagen Beetle engine, to mounted the water pump to it. Keen Engineering had this product, this pump designed for this engine, in their catalog. They didn't have any other options, so we started with the Volkswagen Beetle engine. That's what we used on our other dredge, and it works okay. It's just a 1960s, 1950s technology, so it's not as fuel efficient, and it's not as maintenance free as you'd expect from a modern engine. There I am in the test pond, running the tests. So here we are fabricating some more stuff. I think that's the sluice box we ended up using. We like to build sluice boxes out of wood because it gives us a lot better abilities to modify it in the field, where we don't have to worry about welding rusty steel, and then we can screw down our stuff. And it has better harmonics, we think. Just nicer to have a metal, or it's nicer having a wooden sluice box than a metal, because metal, the vibrations from the engine will transmit through and cause gold to migrate more, whereas wood is more of a dampening effect. Here we are packing the container. So you see the one pontoon and then the other pontoon, and unfortunately the open top, which was, like I said, not a good idea. And we packed in enough wood for 2 cabins. So unfortunately, I didn't know any better at the time. Like I said, this was 12 years ago, and I bought OSB, whereas the other guy, Steve, who I shipped up some stuff for him, he bought some really nice plywood. And we tried a bunch of different configurations, and we tried the Sea-Doo here, we tried the ATV here. I think we ended up flying up the Sea-Doo and the ATV because it was better to use the space for other stuff. So you got the roofing material, shower, insulation, a couple stoves for the 2 cabins. So we packed this pretty efficiently. The truck that came and picked it up had trouble getting it up on the truck. This is the type of moss or carpet we used for our base layer. So it's a backed ribbed carpet. So this is a runner carpet. We like the rubber backed and then the ribbed, and on top of this we put miner's moss. So this is what we look for. It's worth the price. So this is what we like to use. Here's another picture of the design in the water. And then here we are constructing it. So this is us waiting for the sea ice. So this wouldn't be 2008, this would be either 2009 or 2010. And to pull this out of the water, we use this old track rig from the 70s. It also had a Volkswagen Beetle engine in it, which is useful for spare part redundancy. But we got there this is May, waiting for the sea ice to go out, and outfitting, doing any fixes and repairs and upgrades to the dredge. So we got our diver umbilical there. Probably it looks like a new one I was building there. The anchors and all that good stuff. So once the floating ice went away, the shore fast ice was still there. So we had to chop and cut it up, and we chopped and cut it and got it free. So this looks like 2009 based on the paint, and we were able to start mining a little early. So for larger dredges, the mining season starts June 1st, but for diver operated, you're allowed to go a little bit earlier, as long as you aren't mining where there's king crab. Here's another picture of it again, from the schematic, the drawing. So here is the satellite picture. Really good site at the Modus website. So this big chunk of ice broke off, and that's what allowed us to do this. So it kind of peels around Norton Sound. So ice starts breaking off, breaks off at Bluff, and 3 days later it hits Nome, and then it stops at the jetty, and then another day it breaks off here. So we have to be careful when we do this, because one, our shore landing zone is very limited. We have to land basically in the same spot, and if the wind changes, this ice could blow back in and crush us, or crush the boat. We can get out of the way pretty fast, but here is the track rig, snow track, snow track with a C. Anyway, it's a white cappy west wind day. So this is the afternoon. The west winds pick up normally about 2 to 3, 1 to 3 every afternoon that it's sunny. So if you want to get good dredging in, you got to start at about 2 a.m. to get a full day's of dredging in before the west winds pick up. I see so many people that just start heading out there at 11, and that's not the way to go. Snow track, here's our excavator we used to help us with surface operations for our ice operation in 2011. So maybe I'll talk about that in another video. Here's me below water. We got dredging away. The shadows of the dredge. What is this? Very old video. Like I said, this is over 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago. So this is from my first dredge, filming the second dredge. So here's a very blurry picture of some gold. So you can see the alien over here, and then it flew over here. Oh, wait, no, that's the other video. So I think that was a pocket in that transfer screening area. Again, very small video. Me underwater. This was done with a early version of an underwater camera. I think it was called a Sea View. But as far as digital cameras went at the time, this was pretty good. Stick it underwater, and there I am. Or maybe that's the other guy. Maybe I'm filming. I don't know. It was 10 years ago. Here's a picture of the nozzle and the material. So this is what we are about to suck up, and this is the clay beneath. It's this grayish, slick clay. Technically, I guess it's a mud, but we'll leave that to the geologists to discuss while they're not mining for gold. Because geologists love to talk, and they don't really like actually moving material in Nome. So, yeah, when a geologist talks to you about Nome, ask them how much gold they've actually mined from Nome, and they'll start hemming and hawing. So here it is again. There's probably some gold streaking here out of the material, and so that's why I took the picture. But this material is heavy cobble. That's about hand-sized. That's about fist size. Well, I don't know. This is an 8-inch across here, so I guess that is about fist size. About 3 or 4 inches by 5 inches. That would be too big to go up the nozzle. The flat rocks, you want to just move them. You don't want to move as many rocks as you can, and suck up the material as fast as you can. So here's a boulder. This is probably 3 or 4 feet in diameter, and these are bigger boulders. So I can easily move these not easily, but I can move these underwater by hand. So sometimes I did. Another sandy area going into cobble. So this is pretty good gold around here. But it seems like gold's in the transition layers. Not good gold here, not worthwhile digging in here. We did floats along the hose to keep it from sagging too much. Otherwise it just goes down and then drags across the bottom. We want the hose floating except for the nozzle. Here's the tailings pile. So we got this is probably off the sluice box, and then over here is the tailings off of the screen deck. And the ROV had similar piles where we'd have a big pile of small size and then a big pile of big size, and then the next year it'd be flat. You couldn't tell anyone had dredged because the storm would wash it down. So one thing we did was needed a lot of gasoline because we used gasoline engines. So here is a custom trailer that my mining partner designed and built off of ATV front ends. So pretty nice. We were able to haul a little bit of fuel with this and last for a few days. I think I spent about $8,000 in fuel that year. Here we go, a little bit of little cleanup. So yeah, little gold. There's some more gold drying on the cook stove, outdoor propane stove. So we don't want to dry it inside, of course. This is probably about 30 or 40 ounces from that cleanup. Here we are again, waiting for the sea ice to go away so we can launch the dredge. Here's the old Volkswagen diesel, or the Volkswagen Type 2 engine and the Y. Some more pictures. So it didn't weather very good. The pontoons and the steel, ideally I would have gotten a different type of steel. This is just mild steel. They have better stuff that rusts better. And of course the pre-primed stuff would have been better and thicker. So those three factors, then these pontoons would probably still be in service today. Of course not by me because I've moved on to bigger and better things, but certainly it's some ideas for the new folks out there. Yeah, if I had to do a diver dredge again, I would have a lot of ideas on how to really make a good one. The beam here was 10-foot beam, so that was okay, an okay beam. 10 foot or 12 foot is better. I think 12 and a half feet is what I did on the vessel that's now called the Eroica when I designed and built that. Because I took, with aluminum, you take 25 feet and you cut it in half, and that gives you 12 and a half feet. Whereas steel beams come in 40-foot or 20-foot sections. Aluminum comes in 25-foot sections. So in hindsight, I probably should have done 12 feet wide here. But here I used tube steel for handrail. I would not recommend that. It was okay, but tube steel rusts from the inside out because you can't paint it. So angle iron would have been better. So avoiding tubes is best unless they're large enough where you could paint them somehow. But like I said, things lasted longer than they rusted. So here's the rust is our enemy. Not sure if that's the same one. We made a couple of these Ys. Later on we got rid of that sump pump, so we didn't need the 2-inch takeoff. So, and we never got around to putting the mounting nuts on. So later on, we switched over to Kohler engine. Kohler had pretty good engines at the time. I don't know if they still do. Nowadays, I think I would go with a diesel, liquid-cooled diesel. There's some better ones that are used for riding lawnmowers nowadays. Keen Engineering at the time did not have a pre-made pump that mounted directly to a Kohler engine, so I had to use a pedestal pump and mounted it with a spider coupler. I used the external spider coupler, and that was for ease of use. What I should have done was have a clutch, but I wasn't able to find a good clutch that I liked for a reasonable price. They just seemed way too expensive. But a clutch would have been good for a lot of reasons, because then we could have warmed up the engine. We could have gotten we could have powered some other things. Of course, if I had a hydraulic system for the wheels, I would have wanted a clutch, both a clutch for the hydraulic system and a clutch for the water pump. So the engine could be running, could drive the boat out there, could be all warmed up, have the diver water all running and warmed up, and then simply prime the pump and then engage the clutch and start pumping water with a nice warmed up engine. So Another view. We used a separate air compressor. So again, Keen Engineering air compressor with their largest stainless steel air tank. Here's a neat trick. You know what this is doing? This is priming the water pump. Do you know how it primes it? It doesn't pump water in, it sucks the air out. Because the foot valve is below water and the jet is below water, this sucks the air out, which pulls the water up in a vacuum prime. And then we close the valve and it pumps. We have this filter here. This filter goes to the dive water. So we have a little offtake from this pump. A little garden hose comes off this pump, goes over through this strainer and to the diver. The diver, it then goes through this water heater. This is a exhaust heater, and then down to the diver. Keeps the diver nice and warm. The warmest place to be is on the bottom of the Bering Sea doing this stuff. So when we had a topside guy, the topside guy would sit up here, and I rigged up a headset. So we had a comm box that I made myself that used FM transmitter. So this FM receiver and listen to the diver breathe and make sure the diver was okay. They could also play music, plug in an iPod or whatever they had, whatever we used at the time, some sort of MP3 player or cassette player. You know, I guess it was 2009, so we had MP3 players already. Later on, we did get a commercial box, and then I installed an FM transmitter in that commercial box. But it's pretty neat. For the diver, I used a Gray Ghost headset designed for underwater metal detectors, and then so the person up top could talk to the diver and send music down to the diver, but I didn't have a microphone because we didn't use full face masks at the time. So if the diver wanted to signal, they would do something. But I remember listening to people breathe, so we must have had some sort of microphone at some point. With the commercial setup, we certainly did. But when we kept the microphone alive, the microphone was the part that would die the most often. So here we are. So this was a nice upgrade. Pat Keen of Keen Engineering actually was driving down the beach going to the GPAA camp and stopped and talked with us a little bit, and then a year or two later they came out with a direct mount. I guess he got the clue from me and a lot of other customers that we don't like the Volkswagen Beetle engine anymore because there's better options. So they heard us and they started producing one. But I think I'm the first person to use a Kohler with a Keen pump. There we are. And again, I guess it's the same picture. I used a speed, a flow meter, flow gauge, so we could see sometimes the water doesn't flow fast enough, so it overheats and steam locks inside this heaterator, this exhaust heat exchanger. And so we want to check the flow rate and make sure that it's flowing. Ideally, we would just turn this up so it was all the way open and it was just flowing constantly. Our first year, we had a liquid-cooled engine, and that was really nice. We had no trouble with diver heat. I've seen other people have started using monkey heaters and other type of diesel-powered heaters, which I think is a waste. The engine is producing a lot of waste heat. Only 1/3 of the energy from the fuel is going into the water energy. Another third is being wasted by heat, and or the rest of it's being wasted by heat in various forms and mechanical losses. So it's best to use the heat off the engine. So if I was going to do it again, 40 or 50 horsepower, diesel, turbojet, liquid cooled, something good, simple. We are again, foot valve comes in, goes out. This is a little creature I saw. It surprised me, I surprised it, and we both turned around and walked the other way. It turned out it ran away in an undulating fashion, which I was surprised. It actually turned out to be a river otter, or maybe a sea otter, I forget now, but some sort of otter that I didn't recognize immediately. So there, I think that's about the same picture again. Yeah, these takes a lot of maintenance to keep these dredges alive. So um, we every day there'd be a list of stuff to work on, and then eventually it'd be every few days there'd be a list of stuff to work on. But the way the weather works in Nome, this type of dredge can only work about 50 days a year. We would get about 300 hours of mining time. And when we could get a third of an ounce an hour, that worked out pretty good. But nowadays, most people aren't getting third of an ounce an hour with a 6 or 8 inch dredge. So there's a lot of dredges for sale. Unfortunately, a lot of people use party barges or party boats, those lake boat, pontoon boats, and I don't like those for this type of application. They're great for lakes, but for this, I want something with bigger beam, bigger pontoons, keep stuff out of the water. There's my friends Dave and Kevin over on their 10-inch dredge called the Norpack. That's Sledge Island. This is Cape Rodney's over here. Got this is on the Tom Cod, or what is now called the Tom Cod, and the boundaries have changed quite a bit over the years. There's Norpack again, so they might put this back in the water next year. It hasn't been in the water for several years, but I don't know. It might go back in the water again next year. Here is the mined line. So this area, all of this has been mined. So these rocks are too big to go up the nozzle, and then I'm working my way across here. The way I keep track of where I want to go is I'd put a rock. If it was good gold, I'd put a rock up, because it's very easy to get disoriented underwater. So I'm mining along. This is only about a foot thick, 18 inches thick, and we're in about 8 feet of water here. So here's a little bit of gold in the sluice box. So it's probably time to clean out the sluice box and store the bucket for a bad weather day. So same picture, or same gold, a little closer. Here's cleanup day. Screen the material to several different sizes. And pan each size separately. So this is back before we had our shaker table. Now we are no longer doing these diver operated dredges. I am doing commercial operations. I started doing commercial operations in 2012, and 2016, along with some mining partners, I acquired all these leases. So that's Nome. That's the Nome airport. This is 29 square miles of leases, 16,500 acres each. This is 1 square mile, 1 square mile, half a square mile, half a square mile, half a square mile, 1 square mile, 1 square mile, 1 square mile, 2 square miles, 3 square miles. So a lot of acreage. So that meant I needed to upgrade my equipment dramatically. So this is the next project I did. It's a 205 foot with a 20-yard clamshell, and this is going to start production this coming year. So here's the dredge built. So again, I did computer modeling, figured out the layout, everything else, did a lot of math, a lot of engineering, hired some people to double check my numbers, and built it. So it's nice because my anchor gear weighs more than a lot of dredges do. So that's the serious dredge. I could fit the Christine Rose on this dredge several times over. So here's the bucket. This is a 20-yard bucket, so 4 times larger than Ken Kerr's Murder Irene's bucket, which is 5-yard. So be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if there's any other topics you want me to cover. I'm getting some requests about ice mining, so I think we'll discuss that. I'll have a comment down in the bottom, so like that comment to upvote my ice mining video and make that more of a priority for me to work on. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe and share with your friends.